It's time for Fight News Now. I'm John Pollock. On today's show, we're going to be chatting about two cards that went down from the state of Texas over the weekend with Bellator 161, with a big focus on the signing of Chael Sonnen, and then the UFC's first ever Fight Night event in Hidalgo, Texas, where Michael Johnson stopped Dustin Poirier in the main event. All that and lots more coming your way on today's show. Here with John Ramdeen and Robin Black to chat about an action-packed weekend in Texas, no less. Bellator 161 going down and the UFC's card in Hidalgo, Texas. Let's start off with Bellator because, yes, we did have some fights, some good performances by Joe Warren. Czech Congo got the majority decision victory over Tony Johnson, but this felt like a 2-hour commercial for our big signing of Chael Sonnen, who opened up the show cold, and then we had 2 interviews with him spread out throughout the night with Sean Grande and Jimmy Smith. But that was probably what most people had an interest in, was hearing from Chael Sonnen, who walks in as the top star in this company. I don't think that's hyperbole.
Yeah, I agree, and I think what we're getting now is we're getting a sense that maybe Bellator is getting closer, I say closer, to what the UFC product is, and that's you're trying to bring in as many top tier talent as you can. Ben Henderson, Rory McDonald, Matt Mitrione, Czech Congo, as you mentioned, and now Chael Sonnen, because they have to put on big fights. Because right now, unless you are a hardcore fight fan, like our guy Cody, chances are Friday night's Bellator is not a destination unless you happen to be in front of the television, tuned into Spike TV. Now with a name like Chael Sonnen, Robin and I were talking about just some of the crazy matchups that you could have, whether it's Tito Ortiz, whether it's, who knows, Vanderlei Silva, Quentin Jackson, or even Rory McDonald going up to 185 pounds. This guy captures everybody's imagination, and if you're a fight fan and Chael Sonnen is somehow involved, you're going to tune in.
You know, if only for them it was 3 fights a year, that would be great. But it's way more than that because, like you mentioned, Pollock, he starts the show off. That's what everybody's talking about. This guy has the ability to influence every single one of their broadcasts. And I talked to him today, and Chael's a really, really generous guy, and he's been very, very nice to me. He'll give me advice and call me at home about stuff. And this morning, he was waiting by Skype at 5:15 in Westland, Oregon, to talk to us. And what I wanted to ask him, hey, do you talk to Dana? Like, you recognize, if you're thinking that this isn't just they got 3 fights a year. This is, as Pollock mentioned, a huge star for their organization that influences this. And one thing Chael's going to be is a great politician too, because we get along great. But do you? I mean, I can't imagine that is very good news to see somebody with that kind of influence go to a competitor.
And there's a story there that Chael certainly didn't want to go into. I mean, I was on the conference call on Friday, and he was very careful with his wording, saying, I was not under contract with the UFC when I signed my contract with Bellator, which is pretty much obvious, but there is some story there of how he went from one to the other, and being part of that USADA testing pool. I don't think he really wants to talk about how he ended up with Bellator, and maybe we will find out that story later on, but he's certainly not positioning this as any kind of a bitter divorce from the UFC. It's simply, there was probably an incredible offer here. I'm just curious of how the UFC was, if they had an interest here, or why they would want to let him out of his deal, or if Sonnen had some leverage that he was able to exercise and escape from his contract.
Yeah, one thing
These are all questions that are out there.
True, and one thing, like we've talked about, Chael Sonnen is a master at playing the game. He's been in the game so long. All you have to do is go back and look at his earlier career, whether it was broadcasting Sport Fight or in Bodog. Chael Sonnen didn't do all those things. He wasn't the outrageous character that he is right now. He's learned how to play this game. And just like he fought in other organizations, whether it be the WEC before he made his return to the UFC, he has an understanding of things. He's obviously has relationships in place. And right now, he's looking out for what's the best for his family. So I'm sure he didn't ruffle too many feathers, but who knows? Chael Sonnen's good at ruffling feathers.
He's not anything like what you see on TV. That's an entertainer. He's a family guy who loves work and is passionate about trying to accomplish things and loves to fight. But the whole maybe there's a drug test failure in there, it should raise a lot of questions about our own biases. And yeah, you guys pointed it out last week. Vitor will fail a drug test, or Vitor will have some things around him.
People are on him.
People are on him, and there's a likability factor, and whether we carry this conversation onto politics, in the United States, we've got his buddy Trump is leading in a bunch of places. There's likability factors. And we should ask ourselves these questions. And Chael's a friend, and I like the guy, and we cheer for the guy for some reason. But we should this is a great chance for us to ask questions about why we back some people when there's question marks and other ones we throw under the bus.
Because he makes us laugh. Vitor Belfort, he just denies things, where Chael Sonnen can just say something outlandish, people will have a chuckle and move on.
And in some level underneath, do we care? Do we really, honestly, outrageously care about steroids? Or does somewhere in this gray area, we understand the guy who drives my streetcar is juiced out of his mind? I see him. This guy is enormous. If Jimmy Smith had some sort of, hormonal deficiency, Jimmy Smith could take whatever hormones they needed. If Scott Coker wanted to do anti-aging, he could take these kinds of drugs. But an athlete who trains hard is this something that we should be talking about? Is this something, maybe the gray area is something we're all undecided? I don't know what the answer is.
Well, let's discuss as well, because we only have a few minutes left here, about the UFC's card itself on Saturday night. A terrific performance from Michael Johnson in the main event, stopping Dustin Poirier. I know a lot was made of kind of his post-fight celebration and standing over top of Dustin Poirier. I really just saw it as a guy who had just stopped a really tough opponent and was just celebrating. And some people saw it as disrespectful. I saw him just being in the moment. I didn't think it really required a necessary outcry. But Michael Johnson, this was a huge win for him to snap that losing skid and stopping Dustin Poirier, who's been red hot since coming back to lightweight.
I think this just elevated his status. When we've had this conversation right now at 170 pounds, 155 pounds, and 145 pounds. It is the deepest the division has ever been. You have a stoppage like that, that's not enough. You come out, you be disrespectful for the down Dustin Poirier. People are on you. This guy is a perfect heel right now, and you gotta make noise if you want a big and high-profile fight. And he did that. People hate the guy right now, so that's good.
Fastest hands in the division, the best right hook in the division right now. And you're both right. It was disrespectful. And it was in the moment, later, once he comes out, it's like, man, I didn't have to be that rude. That guy's another fighter, the class of being a martial artist, that you appreciate your opponent. For real, he thinks that. But in that moment, just like Pollock said, lit up by energy, a guy was trying to punch his face in his underpants in front of 100,000 people and take half his paycheck. Of course that's how
Maybe
he
it's
felt.
because I just saw Edmund Tarverdyan and Fabricio Verdun, so when I watched that on Saturday, I was like, he didn't touch him, he was just celebrating.
Yeah, good point.
Also on Saturday, a huge win for Derek Brunson, now 5 in a row. And that middleweight division, it's like Tetris when you're distracted and suddenly it's just mounting with these potential challengers. And Derek Brunson is now in that same grouping with your Luke Rockholds, Chris Weidman, Jacare, Yoel Romero, whoever wins between Gegard Mousasi and Vitor Belfort in a couple of weeks. I mean, this division is just so solid with contenders, and it's going to take a number of, like Derek Brunson has won 5 straight.
Yeah.
It would not surprise me if he needs to win minimum 2 more before we're even talking about this guy getting a crack at this title.
That is the state of the 185-pound class. We were having the conversation about the 205-pound division and how John Jones is clearly the number 1 guy. He's not the champion right now. That's reserved for Daniel Cormier, who is the number 2 guy. But the gap between number 1 and number 2 and number 3 is so big. Just like at middleweight, you have your current champion, Michael Bisping, which is weird to call Michael Bisping the champion when the challengers are Chris Weidman and Luke Rockhold and Jacare and Yoel Romero and Gegard Mousasi, which I think is the next heap of guys. And then Derek Brunson falls somewhere below those guys. I'm not saying that he can't compete with them, but you look at the names.
It's just a testament of who's above him.
Exactly.
Do you know why Michael Bisping is the champ?
Because he's the man.
Because he knocked out Luke Rockhold in the first round. And the point of saying that, I think we all know that, is that this happens a lot. And it happens when you do have parity at the top. And we don't know. We don't know if Chris Weidman will beat Yoel Romero. We don't know if Luke Rockhold will beat Jacare. Those are the 2 guys we feel are up there, but our feelings aren't in the cage. These guys are in the cage. And I'm telling you, man, Brunson is the real thing. He's the real thing. The way he set up Hall is moving out to his own right, and Brunson is essentially deciding, I'm going to shuffle in line with you, and I fully understand that your power right hand is coming, But so what? My power left hand will also be coming, and I'll race you. And as we see this established, you'll see it as these two guys come together. Hall will, under pressure, realize that he has to move right to his right, and he just cuts him off. That is a risk, but it's a risk he's willing to take because he knows he knocks guys out. 4 in a row in the first round. How many he's got to knock out? 5, 6, 7? Derek Brunson is absolutely, positively the real deal at 185 pounds.
We are all out of time, but be sure to check out our preview show coming up this Saturday night as we will be going through all of the fights happening in Brazil, which is headlined by Chris Cyborg Justino taking on the debuting Lena Landsberg.